Hello again. If you're wondering about the title of this video, today is Charles Dickens' birthday, so I've been a bit sneaky and used the term the Artful Dodger. I'll let you determine who the Artful Dodger is in the context of this video. I've not cast Oliver, and I've not cast Fagin, because if I portrayed Fagin using Dickens' words, I would definitely be identified as far right and probably put in prison. Anyone who's read Oliver Twist will understand what I mean. In previous videos, I've outlined how I believe the FCA and Tulip Sadiq misled the public and Parliament in the choreographed response to the all-party parliamentary group report into the regulator. Now, Bob Blackburn, who fronted the report, has described the FCA's response as being defensive and noted a reluctance to positively engage, and described their approach as friendly and in good faith for the industry, which no reason to doubt it isn't. This prompted the all-party parliamentary group to issue a supplementary report, and I understand that there's further instalments of that to come. Naturally, I'm intrigued at the game of cat and mouse between the all-party parliamentary group and the FCA, because I have myself, as you know from this series of videos, commented extensively on the obfuscation that I've encountered and observed from the FCA in regards to the wealth tax scandal and the impact it's had on the victims. Now, I pasted in some narrative in the description box, and that's come from an article I received. The article was written and posted in the Financial Times. I think it's by a lady called Alina Khan. The article is very nicely written, and it contains a block of narrative that's been produced by the FCA through their press office, no doubt. And it's what I want to do now is to get myself into a Socratic versus sophist approach mindset and look at this narrative and unpack it. So let's look at the first paragraph. This is what I refer to as repeat narrative. I've sort of covered that in previous videos. And if you want, this is what I describe as when a person or organization wants to frame your understanding of a reality, a situation, they keep repeat, and the hope that it just sticks, and eventually you just submit to this narrative. If you want a really current example, it would be Rachel Reeves when she uses this "I'm going further and faster for growth" narrative. You see it quite a lot. You saw it in her speech. So an example would be, now if you said, she says, right, I'm going further and faster for growth, you would say, well, where is it? I'm going further and faster for growth. When are we going to see it? I'm going to go further and faster for growth. And you would say, well, the Bank of England have just halved their forecast for growth. I'm going further and faster for growth. And you would just say, okay, she's going further and faster for growth. That's kind of what it wants to do. Silly example, I know, but that's as current as I can make it. If you look at, again, paragraph 1, I do not recognize the characterisation of the FCA. Now, if you look at my video, disorderly response, you'll see that narrative. If you look at the FT or anybody else's coverage of the initial all-party parliamentary group report, you'll see exactly the same. I don't recognise this characterisation of the FCA. That's very, very common response that we've got used to. They're just trying to frame and just bounce off any criticism and buy time. Now, let's look at the second paragraph. This is a bit more interesting, this one. Where there are further lessons to learn, we will take this forward as part of our ongoing work to continuously improve. Now, what they're doing here is they know that the all-party parliamentary group are going to come back at them and say, well, initially you shunned our report because you said that it's historic and you've made these improvements and it's no longer relevant. And they know probably that the all-party parliamentary group report in its supplementary form will include examples outside of the initial report, also showing alarming shortcomings. So deconstructing that narrative that they've transformed and therefore don't recognise this characterisation of the FCA. Now, I do think they probably have improved in some extent. But what they're trying to do here is they're trying to also go into this rinse and repeat cycle that I commented on in other videos. Whereas if you take WealthTech, an example, it's clear that WealthTech, the catastrophic failures are way beyond just whistleblowing, but there are characteristics in what I've identified in these videos that are common to the initial all-party parliamentary group report. And what they want to do effectively is carry WealthTech for its duration, however long the legal process takes that, and get to the end of that and say, yeah, there might have been a few things we could have done better, but we fixed it now, hence this second paragraph. And if something in the meantime breaks that looks also like WealthTech, they will say prejudice the investigation, so they'll hide behind prejudice. And I've done 2 videos showing how prejudice is abused, even using Keir Starmer's approach, which is very similar to what the FCA are trying to do in this, as an example how you can pervert the concept of prejudice to try to thwart accountability. But I've also anticipated this myself, and what I did in the previous video is I gave an example of an allegation they made against John throughout this process, when they said that during application for direct authorization, he didn't disclose a bankruptcy order served by HMRC in 2018, July 2018. Now, I've suggested that is a major weakness in the current system, because investment advisors and managers, they have to go through an annual fit and proper declaration, if you like. So you have to repeat, answer a series of yes and no questions with some expanded boxes if you need, covering your financial health really, and if you've suffered any defaults or bankruptcy orders or anything like that. And it's the same process. And I can tell you this because I've had to complete one myself very recently. And what I can tell you is, if I wanted to, let's say I had been served with a bankruptcy order, and I chose not to disclose that, I could have done that. And there was no way that I can see anybody who could have discovered it had I chose to hide it. No, I haven't. So I have nothing to disclose. I'm giving you an example. So, and I suggested in the previous video, this was back in 2019 when the application process was running. So had electronic checks been in place then, which is not unreasonable, because whilst the vast majority of people will be honest, a person in a difficult situation who might be hiding something, there's going to be a big temptation to not disclose, particularly as you can't see a way of how you'd be discovered because there's no electronic checking. And had that been identified in 2019, it would have saved a lot of money. If you look at the questions for the FCA video, you'll see a timeline for when they suggest money was taken, where they allege the timing of the misuse of client assets. And had this have been done in 2019, this is 2 years before I raised serious concerns. A lot of money could have been saved, if the allegations are proven. And I have just completed the same process. This, in my mind, could happen again. So that's why I raised this in the previous video and this video, because it deconstructs what they're saying here. Now, it's very serious because after the initial all-party parliamentary group report, Nihil Ratti went on a media round, and he was saying, he was repeating this narrative that the FCA is not the same organisation, it's transformed. Now, and Tulip Sadiq as well, when she was in the role, in the way she answered Blackman's questions in Parliament, this is not being candid. This is disingenuous. And if you've got the hierarchy of the FCA doing this, it's very, very serious. And this is the reason why I was unable to assist them in the legal process, because they've been dishonest, in my opinion, or certainly disingenuous, and haven't been candid with the public. They have issued misleading narrative to the public. And I couldn't see how I could viably work with what is now with their prosecutor hat on. It was with their investigator hat previously. How I can work with a prosecutor who had been, in my mind, disingenuous in how it had communicated with the public. Now, as I'm trying to say, the FCA's role, in my mind, is to lead from the front and set an example from the top. And if you've got leading members of the organisation, Therese Chambers, who I've covered throughout this video, and Nikhil Ratti, that are misleading people, knowing that things, knowing that they didn't intervene expediently as suggested, and knowing that one of the allegations they made of John in terms of misleading them with bankruptcy orders and not being open and upfront with them could still be done now, is a bad way to approach this situation, because they are seeking to mislead the public and Parliament in the case of Tulip Sadiq. Now, what I need to look at now is really move on to the third paragraph. This concerns parliamentary scrutiny. And this is a little bit concerning, this, because what the narrative is saying here is the FCA have given evidence to Parliament on a few occasions, but they've not been asked about the concerns raised by the all-party parliamentary group. And I think this shows a failure of Parliament, both this term and the previous term, under the Conservatives and now Labour. Because what they should have done, or what they should do, is they should have looked at all the allegations that the FCA have made against John. And I say that it's way, way, way beyond just whistleblowing. And I've covered that in the book Lost the Races, and I've covered it in this series of videos. And they should have said to the FCA, okay, this is what you allege. Now, what assurances can you give us and the public the consumer, that this hasn't been done by someone else and could not be done by someone else. That is what holding them to account from a parliamentary point of view should involve. It's very logical. You can't come out and say this is one of the biggest frauds we've seen from an individual, or the biggest, and it's been, assets have been allegedly used to fund lavish lifestyles and so on and so forth, and there's been dishonesty and so on and so forth, without someone saying to them, well, that's very, very shocking, but these huge shortcomings in the system which allowed this to happen or facilitated it, hence the two sides of the same coin argument I've used throughout these videos and the book. What's to say someone else hasn't done it, or what's to say someone else couldn't do it? That's the assurances they should have sought from the FCA, and still, to my knowledge, haven't. If they say they have, then why are you still able to sign yourself off as fit and proper when you could hide bankruptcy orders? There's a question for you. Now, the fourth and fifth paragraphs are quite interesting too. They effectively they come down to, and I've raised this in, again, this series of videos, and also the book Lost the Race, is the secondary objective, and I've argued, and I argued when I wrote the book back in, I had to write it really quickly, off the top of my head, most of it really, so I finished it in April 24, and one term I used is I believe the victims of the WellTech scandal will be sacrificed on the altar of the secondary objective. Because essentially both the previous government and the current government are, both pushing hard for growth, because the UK, like many other developed countries, have got way too much debt. You can't go back to the past and do QE again, so you've got to kind of grow your way out of it and do some cutting as well. And both of them have identified financial services as a way of potentially doing that. Now, I don't think that's a bad ambition, but they're going about it the wrong way. Effectively, they're trying to force growth through a broken regulatory system. And I think, given the ambition to use the financial services sector to drive growth, they want to do it on the cheap, because they don't want to go through a process of reforming the regulator, because it takes time before they can then go for growth. So they're trying to go about it the wrong way. Cart before the horse is a phrase I use in the book and these videos. So the scale of the catastrophic failures from the FCA's angle in regards to WellTech are somewhat embarrassing, because they would throw into doubt the wisdom of doing it that way. So there has been a concerted effort to try to suppress reporting of it, to keep it out, keep it down, because it in many ways interferes with this objective. And there is, I'm aware of communications between HM, Treasury and the FCA, both during Hunt's time and now during Reeves' time, how to handle this, and we may come to that in a future point in time. That is why, in my opinion, a lot of the reasons why behind this obfuscation, and why Parliament aren't stepping up to hold the FCA to account. The other, if we look at the fifth paragraph, this I do have a little bit of sympathy with the FCA, because what they're saying is, in many ways, this growth thing, they've the secondary objective, trying to balance that with consumer protection objective is very, very difficult. And I interpret that last paragraph as how do you want us to weight this, because it's tricky. And I think we've got a situation here where if the current government continue with this, trying to force growth without really giving the FCA guidance on how to weight it properly versus consumer protection, they risk tearing the FCA apart, effectively, just tearing them limb from limb. And I think it will lead to disasters down the line, in my opinion. But yeah, I mean, that's my take on it. But I want to, again, before I close out, I don't want to make this video too long, so I apologise for that. Take a look at Emily Shepherd's speech on the FCA's website. I think it was published on the 4th of February. And it's called, Culture is Contagious. And this is another problem, because you've got a situation where she's sort of come out and she said, culture is important because if you don't get your culture right, it will feed down and lead to bad outcomes. The context of which she's done it, it's not unreasonable. I would say if it was done within a meritocratic framework, much of it's reasonably sensible. But read it, and I think what will come to you is you're going to look at this and you're going to think, this is crazy. This is effectively do as we say, not as we do. Because I agree with her that culture is contagious. But look, we have seen throughout the series of videos, all-party parliamentary group report, similar stuff, where there was a definite culture of obfuscation there. There is a willingness to be disingenuous with the truth, willingness to mislead. And, I would say to Emily, look at this series of videos, okay? Then ask yourself, what about your own culture? What about the way that you've communicated with the public and Parliament? And how that culture will lead to bad outcomes for the victims of financial scandals. That is what they need to do. And I think, in my opinion, what we have here is you see an organisation that is rotting from the top down, and it's too arrogant and not held sufficiently accountable because of the inconvenience of the secondary objective and the growth ambitions to do anything about it. But that rot will permeate down and we'll see more scandals. Right, that's it for now, and I'll speak to you soon.